Today I'm going to talk about the Japanese horror film The Grudge. It was written and directed by Takeshi Shimizu, and this is actually the third film of the Ju-On franchise. It's kind of odd how long he stuck with this franchise. He did Ju-On the Curse, Ju-On the Curse 2, Ju-On the Grudge, Ju-On the Grudge 2, and then he did the American remake simply called The Grudge, and its sequel, The Grudge 2. You would have thought he would have been sick of the series at this point. Anyway, the basic story is a social worker is assigned to look after this old woman. When she arrives, she sees that the house is in a mess and the old woman is left to her own devices. This old woman is very expressionless, doesn't talk, and she just sits there really. Gives a really creepy vibe straight from the start. The social worker then sees this small boy locked in the cupboard. She later finds out that he actually went missing a few years back, and he should be much older at this point. So some really strange happenings occur in this house. But once she leaves the house, she proceeds to get haunted by the spirits of the house. It then goes on to show a bunch of other storylines of people who have entered the house and have also been haunted by the spirits of this house. Some are drawn to the very peak of madness as they are murdered or simply disappear. There are quite a few things that separate this from a lot of other horror films, and certainly a lot of English horror films. It doesn't have a main character that the story revolves around, and there isn't really a hero. There also isn't a clear-cut villain either. Most haunted house type horror films, the characters would be haunted while contained inside the house. Outside is the safe place. But here, the evil presence follows them outside the house and will get them. The majority of horror these days relies too strongly on special effects, particularly CGI effects. This uses bare bones minimal special effects, and as a result makes it seem all that more real. This film also goes for some scares in broad daylight, which would seem a bit risky, but I think it does work for this film. A lot of horror today also relies on jump scares, but this film goes more for an evil, foreboding atmosphere with the frightening images in the background, with the characters sometimes being unaware of their presence. The film also uses television images which are heavily distorted in much the same way that the Ring series did. It uses editing to great effect with some of these shots, which could really make or break the flow of the film. The music here doesn't get too carried away, it gets held back in favour of really eerie and unsettling sound effects. The kind of groaning sound of the spirits or the buzzing sound that some of the characters can hear. The film is also non-linear, which is pretty unusual for a horror film, and sometimes some of the storylines intersect with each other. So all in all, a really effective ghost story, but it does have its flaws. I think that there's a bit too much storylines crammed in there. I think there's like 6 storylines that it followed in this 90-minute feature, and you don't really grow to like much of these characters. I don't mind it not following one particular character. I actually like that it was trying to do something a bit different, but I think it was just way too much. You have to take big leaps of faith in this film, not only having spirits of the past, but there's also somehow spirits of the future and images that will come to be. A lot of different supernatural elements at work here. Like I mentioned before, this film is really about that eerie atmosphere, which I think is very strong, but people expecting a shock-a-minute, fast-paced film are going to be very disappointed here. Sam Raimi, the director of the highly influential Evil Dead series, has said that this is one of the most frightening films I had ever seen. And he was actually such a fan of this film that he helped produce the American remake. I think that's all I have to say about this film. So, thanks for listening.